So hi there, it's the first Monday of the month, and I'm here again to answer the questions about Java and Java E. So I got a bunch of interesting questions, and it's a really interesting one. It's a kind of a meta question. Is Gunnar is actually an old friend of the show, asked the resolution of the screencast is rather low, and this made me think, because it should be actually HD 1080p, and turns out that it really depends on your bandwidth. So I tried to watch the screencasts on YouTube with my iPhone, and it was per UMTS. It was really low resolution. I couldn't even recognize the font. But with wireless LAN, worked great. Also, if you watch the screencasts on YouTube with the HTML5 player, I think the highest possible resolution on YouTube is 720p. And if you watch it with Google Chrome or I believe Flash, you can actually watch it in 1080p. So whatever I do, it should be 1080p, and 720p is already somehow a workaround. Okay, this was the first meta question. I got a bunch of Twitter questions, but I would like to start with the official one. So I think Twitter is quiet, so nothing happens there. And yeah, let's start with the first question: performance impact of remote EJBs. And Gregor asked it several times, and seems like he found a bug of a glassfish or something. But what I did actually, I implemented a very small application called Remote, and there is a remote bean, and with a remote interface to simulate actually the behavior. And the remote bean implements the remote interface and returns something just to see the output. And a remote servlet gets injected. Use particularly EJB not to simulate the behavior Gregor mentioned. And I just invoked the EJB here. And what Gregor stated, that there is a significant overhead of using EJBs. So what I did, I performed a very small stress test, very simple one. And I would like to repeat it if it works. So it's a little bit dangerous to prepare something, because then you can get pod conflicts, all the stuff. I just tried it whether it actually worked. And what I saw is the remote is a lot slower than remote servlet. So you see there is an output. And what we do right now, I would just start JMeter, and I go here JMeter, and I start the load generation file. So I think, is it this? Let's see. Yes, it works good. So I would just I will start this, and I would start JVisual VM, and show you a little hack. So I go to Glassfish, I just connect with the process, and then I would like to sample the CPU, so to see what actually happens behind the scenes. So I would like to start it. So I go here and say start, watch the performance. You can see we are around about 500 transactions per second using the servlet. And what we can do right now, I go here and see, you see there is let's measure some performance overhead, and surprisingly, not surprisingly, something an IO related and HTTP consumes the most performance. Airhacks. As you can see, the EJB doesn't even appear here. So the overhead is actually EJB related. But I will just, what I saw previously is, if I do it often enough, I will see some overhead. But in any case, the HTTP overhead was orders of magnitude higher than the HTTP. So I couldn't reproduce this, but I will explain actually what Gregor actually asked. So the issue is, if you are using EJBs, remote EJBs, all the parameters and return values are going to be copied because of the specification requirements, and this can significantly hit the performance. So I will just repeat the test because I don't believe that it's actually run clear all. So we just restart the test. So there is a test, and I will also stop and repeat. I should be able to clear this as well. Where is it? I don't know, it just clears for itself. So there's no proxy. And you can see now it appears dynamic stub get message. So there is some overhead going on. Probably I should use a larger object, not just a string, so we'll see the impact. So the point being, I will change now to local interfaces, and the performance should be significantly better than remote one. So I will go back here, and you see we have 1,600 transactions per second about, and where was the run clear all? So I will just redeploy the application with a small change. So instead of using the remote, I will use the local interface. And now the application server won't have to copy the string, so which should result in a far better performance. So this is actually the reason why you should never use remote interfaces within your application. Just if you really have to talk to to a remote client. So I forgot what they actually can build this. And what Gregor actually asked was, there's an optimization, it's called by reference by Glassfish, and he asked me, it said that it doesn't have any impact. So in my project, it had an impact. What I'm doing right now, I'm simulating the call by reference by using local. I was just too lazy to create an EJB jars and here to create exactly what actually Gregor asked. So instead of using call by reference, I just tested with remote and local, and to emulate the environment remote servlet. So it works still. So then I will go here, there's this, and run, and then stop it, and interesting. Performance is even lower, which is crazy. So this is actually interesting. Probably it was not ready with the deployment, but before the show, it was about twice as high the local interface as the remote one. So this is reset, and now just try it again and see what happens here. So now there is even the EJB is now so fast that there's actually no it doesn't even appear in the sampler. To be more precise, we would have to use Profiler, but it would slow down significantly Glassfish and the process. So it is around 1,500. I think the problem is the screencast software I'm using. So it takes significant amount of processing power. And my laptop is already hitting. Oh, I think it was the boost effect of CPU. Now my fans is running, so the performance degrades. So this is actually the unwanted result. But the point being, you should always use local interfaces. If you cannot use local interfaces within the application, you can use remote, and with the setting call by reference, which is proprietary. It is available on most of the application servers. And why? Because with remote, the application server is forced to serialize all parameters and return values, and with local, you can just call by reference the method. And the overhead of EGB is negligible. You saw there was 1,600 transactions per second, and Gregor mentioned there's 20 milliseconds overhead, so I couldn't measure this. So in any way, remote and local, it was very similar performance. So let's see whether you have any questions. One tweet. What software I'm using for these screencasts? I use a lot of software, so there is not a single one. This really depends whether I'm doing live streaming right now. It is a Wirecast, Final Cut, Logic, Motion, and Paladin, and I don't know what. So I just need the whole infrastructure for remote workshops for my clients. So I said, okay, because I have already in place, I can just create a small community project and answer the questions instead of, using my comments in the blog, which takes significantly more time. So I think Trifilos, I hope your question is answered. So I think it was clear. So use local whenever possible. Remote is actually deprecated, except you really like to have remote communication like IOP to the external clients, but then doesn't make any sense to use call by reference. And remote within a WAR or EAR or EGB jar doesn't make any sense usually. Usually you would use it as a workaround because you use JNDI names or something. Okay, I think the first question is answered. The next one. How would this architecture, so this architecture is referred from Wayne to boundary control entity idea and cross-cutting concerns. So this is actually a very common question, and the follow-up is, isn't a better way to structure apps by splitting? I'm here. The elements vertically instead of horizontally. I mean, stuff related to something like block should reside in the block patches. Everything is package private except interface and entities. So, this is wrong right now. So this was a wrong link. And so what the question is, so what I'm usually doing is the following. So I'm using business packages. And for me, these business packages I consider them like objects. So this would be, let's say, screencast. This could be a block. And I would, whatever is inside, it belongs to the block, like an object. So if you would have a Java class with block, the idea would be the private and methods belong to the class. But you cannot do this in distributed environment. So instead of using a class, I'm using a package. Whatever is in the package, it belongs to block. And now the problem is, or not the problem, the lucky accident is that if we are in a Java EE environment, we know already that we need a dedicated external interface. It has to be coarse-grained because of the communication. So we can say, okay, we need at least one boundary. And usually we need some persistence. So we need the entity, and controls are optional. But I always use the three packages. And now the question is, what happens if you have some common stuff? So usually you would have two components which are able to communicate with each other. So this is okay, this is okay, this is not okay. Why? We have no time right now to answer why this is not okay. But this could call boundary can call another control. Control can call control. An entity has to call entity because otherwise joins would be not possible. So if you have some common stuff, what you can do, you can introduce a pseudo components. It's like components which are only visible within the layer. And so this control could call this control, but there is no boundary. So no external client will be able to access this. This is, I hope, explanation. This is the cross-cutting concerns. And another cross-cutting concern, let's say I have something which is not business related like logging, then I would really create a package with the name logging. So this is the idea. Okay, I think this is clear. So of course, if you have some more cross-cutting concerns, it's a little bit ugly, but it is better than just putting it somewhere else. So I mean, whatever it belongs here to the layer, and the layer is called business. I get another question: why I need business at all? But for now, all the components, business components, reside in the package business. Okay. I hope question answered. And nothing is perfect, but it works surprisingly well. Yeah. Sharif Butt even says, says, okay, I'm right, so thank you, Nafis. So I think we answered now these two questions. Cross-cutting concerns, and why I'm using this structure and not the other one. So because I like to, how it's called locality principle. So if I have to modify, let's say, the screencast, I would open the package and hope whatever belongs to screencast is within the package. Fourth question. Could you maybe elaborate your choice of Mockito and other tools? Well, way back I use EasyMock and JMock, and it was nice, but Mockito is, why I started to use Mockito, I think it was 2009 or 10, because it's that simple, one jar, and actually most of the documentation of Mockito is actually Java doc of the class Mockito, and I introduced Mockito, and whether I like it or not, it doesn't actually matter, but developer from my projects really like that. And this is a very good sign, because, you know, if you introduce something what you really like, you like it and it will work. But if other developers like your choice, this is actually a very good sign. And I never got any complaints against Mockito. So everyone was really happy with it. And probably I will look again and EasyMock, JMock or whatever. But right now, Mockito is just perfect. So so perfect means simple, and I didn't miss anything so far. So this is actually the question from Tran Min Ho. Though what I didn't, I actually wanted to compare all the tools, but actually I thought, okay, this is the right question. I think Mockito is the simplest possible one, which you can really easily learn. Is actually one class Mockito, and all the methods are static methods, which you can statically import, and there's actually the least possible magic. Yeah, and this is actually widespread. Most of Java EE projects I see are using Mockito already. So okay, so I think we answered this. So there is nothing. What problems or benefits can I have running Java 6 application server on Java 7 VM? Can I use example try with resources or switch case with strings? The question, the answer is of course. So I think since Java 7 came out, I always run everything I had on Java 7, so you can perfectly use it. I actually run whatever I can on Java 8 right now. I actually, on my servers, so where the block is running, I think I only have Java 8 installed. There is no Java 7 anymore. I'm not really sure whether my laptop is Java 8. I think Java 7. I think I installed everything. I have just Java 8 running. With Java 8, you should be a little bit more careful, because in Java 8 we added the last Airhacks show, because in Java 8 they extended the bytecode with invoke dynamic, and some proxy frameworks, or not proxy, bytecode manipulation frameworks cannot deal with it. But if your application server starts and you are able to perform basic dependency injection with some proxying, so just I would, and in your case, just start an EJB and inject CDI to it, and wrap the CDI managed bean with intercepting filter, for instance. If this works, perfect. Then you can just run your application server on Java 8. So I had some trouble with Glassfish back then, but it is fixed. And Whitefly, Glassfish, all the major application servers are able to run on Java 8. Yes. I think question answered. So Twitter. See whether there is someone in chat. Probably someone asked the question here. No. Okay. Then the next one. The next one. How should someone make an EE application configurable during runtime? Is there a standardized way to do it? There's, of course, no standardized way because it's a more or less a business requirement. There is no configuration API. There could be one, but there is none right now. And funny enough, short story, I'm asked about this a lot, and sometimes I was even forced to implement this for my clients. So they expected me to implement a configuration framework before the project even started. And funny also, it was cheaper for me to implement such a thing instead of argue with them. They were convinced we need a fully configurable software system in production. And of course, it never went to production. And why not? Because there was no use case for this, and there was no stakeholder who was who wanted actually to change anything in production. So I'm not a huge fan of changing in a running system in production. But what you could do is you could introduce a producers, a CDI producers, and let's implement this. I think it is faster to hack this. New project, I will use Maven with my own archetype. And it was also asked a lot on the recent Java EE Airhacks and Munich Airport configuration. And we implemented this together, actually several times. So let's imagine I would just write some pseudocode, or why not real code. Configuration servlet, and I would use com airhacks prefix. So this is perfect. And then in the same package, a class called screencast. And the screencast is EJB, and say the EJB has to be configured. So, and configured means I would like to have something injected, and let's say a message has to be configurable, and this message I would like to inject. In order to make configuration work, I need injection work, I need a bin.xml. Because Java is 7, I would like to inject everything. And I implement a configurator. And the configurator has a method called whatever. But this method needs to return strings and produces the string. And I expect an injection point, IP. And this injection point provides me with the member declaring class. Let's do it a little bit nicer. Introduce a variable. This is a class. Class was a bug or what? Class get name and plus IP get member get name. So what happens right now, I get the injection point, and now I can get the fully qualified name of the class and fully qualified name of the field, which is unique in the whole project. I can go to the database, fetch the value and inject it. And my screen class, I could just say string message return highly configurable message. Highly configurable message, configuration servlet, configurator. What I wanted to have, screencast. At inject. And what I wanted to do is sc.message. So let's build this and see whether it works. It should. I never tried actually with servlets. I always use JAX-RS so far, but let's see. Run, and this is configuration servlet. I will use the, I think this one is running, hopefully. If not, we get some configuration. And this was configuration servlet. Oh, it works. So I didn't expect this, but it works because it's live. So you see, I injected the key, and the key had to be resolved from a database table or XML or whatever. And now, but it's not live. So what you can do, you can of course say, the problem with this is it gets injected only once per bean instance. It could be cached. So to make it live, you can do something like this. And then say message get. And now it should be live. So let's say plus syst. Oh. As you can see, this is live configuration, right? On each click, something else. And I think, let's try this. If we remove the instance, yeah. By the way, I got the question per email and I couldn't believe it. And you see, this is cached. So this is no more live, but it's cached, one per instance. So if the bean is going to be destroyed, it will be reinjected. I hope the question is fully answered. So you won't believe it, but I got a question per email. Someone wanted to deploy locally application to Glassfish and asked me what is the easiest possible way to do this. So of course, NetBeans, Java E, and click, and you get exactly the same environment I have right now. So what I'm using right now for all my screencasts, all my projects, actually using NetBeans all the time. I also enjoy using IntelliJ. So I have licensed IntelliJ and I really like it, but for most of the time, all the time, I'm using IntelliJ, NetBeans for all my projects and IntelliJ just to see something different. And I try to avoid Eclipse if possible. So, but who cares about the IDEs actually? So you can, oh, please don't download it right now. So this is if you download this, this is actually what I'm using. Okay. I hope the question is answered. So questions? No questions. Okay. Next one. So developing Swim client with EJB backend, would you include deployment unit client server in the package name? No, I never would do this because it is actually not that good idea. Sometimes the class shift between client and server and you will have to refactor everything just because the class is no more on the server but on the client. So what I usually do, what I always differentiate is between presentation classes and business logic classes. This is my differentiation. So because I think it is a good idea to separate the business logic from the presentation because the presentation changes frequently. But let's say if the client uses a utility and the server uses a utility and it's just a utility class or a business logic class, I would not put the class to client on server package just because it belongs to the client. I think this is the job of deployment. Then it would be actually a good idea to create a jar for the client and jar for the server. And packaging is, in my eyes, should be logical. And otherwise you will have to refactor the application just because you decided to deploy more or less classes. But whatever I say, if it works well to you, go for it. So you shouldn't listen to this Airhacks and then refactor all the application because I said something. It is just what I would do in my projects with basically means nothing. So I only see a limited amount of projects, and I'm developing Java from 1997 or no, 1995 actually. But this is just me. So I think we got a question here. The first question, I don't see what you see. I don't see what you see. Sample applications. So what I did, Gregor, is I created servlet and injected an EJB with local and remote and tested the performance and just used JVisual VM and tracked the performance. And there was actually not the calls to the EJB were not measurable. So it was crazy fast performance. But I could share the project, but where it's just waste. So I could even tweet it because it's almost nothing there. So at Inject is even more magic. It was a tweet, and I'm not sure what it actually meant, but I think it refers to something I do frequently. Is I'm often using package private field. So there's no private. Whatever's injected is just injected without using the keyword private, and someone complains it is too much magic because someone could use the reference directly. So what I try to do is to reproduce this. And there is a boundary with injected course control and a servlet, no magic servlet, with injected boundary. And what I try to do is I try to access directly the field CC and then invoke the message. So I would just try to run it. And this is, I think, no magic servlet. As you can see, the field is null, which is interesting. So if I access the field directly, it is null. And then I get back the message. So why null? This is strange, and I would like to explain it to you why null and draw something. There is indeed some magic how EJBs and usually CDI operate. So what usually happens is the following. So you have an EJB, and we have a servlet, and the servlet would like to use the EJB. Because both are in the same package, which actually would never be the case in my projects because the BCE pattern, but let's imagine it would be possible. Then the servlet could access the injected field. So this EJB uses a CDI bean. This would be the control. This is the boundary. This is the control. And this EJB uses the CDI bean. So the servlet could access the fields directly here, right? So, so I did it, and this was null. But it worked, so it means it's null but not null. Why? This is because what usually happens, the container creates a subclass of the EJB. This is the proxy. And in the subclass, you have all the fields, but if you try to access the fields, they are null because they do not matter. The proxy just uses delegation to access the real thing. And between the proxy and the real thing, there's a bunch of interceptors, I would say actually AOP, aspects who cares or which care for about transactions, security, threading, monitoring, session handling, and stuff like this. And this is the actual overhead. So the aspects is actually the actual overhead of EJB, CDI, whatever. A little bit more dangerous is between CDI beans, because if you have CDI bean and another bean with dependent scope means there is not annotated. It is actual a reference to the actual class. So then you could change the fields. But if you would even attempt this, usually something like SonarCube or Sonar Source will scream, right? So this wouldn't pass any quality control. And I would say in source main Java, accessing the fields should be forbidden. In source test Java is absolutely okay. It's just a test. So whatever you hack is okay. Okay, I hope the question is answered and sufficiently covered. No questions. Then the next one. So we are really fast. Are we fast? We are okay for today. Links inside resources for Nilach F, a prior student of Airhacks, so an eager student. And so this, the question is, we have REST resources, and the REST resources, so we have JAX REST service with sub-resources, and I think Ilach refers to the talk I gave for the JConf JAX-ORS about JAX-ORS in Java 7. And I showed something with resources and sub-resources. And the question is, okay, really nice, but how to deal with links? Because usually what you will have is you have a business object, and this business object is dependent on other objects. And if you would like to implement lazy loading, you will have to implement somehow the linking between both. And this is, you have to do it by yourself. So what you will need a DTO which cares about the resources. But there is something interesting. JPA, I think RS. And this is an Eclipse Link project. And what the Eclipse Link project does, it exposes directly JPA entities via RESTful services, and all the dependencies between the entities are represented as links. And this is actually a really nice example for building a RESTful API. So they have REST, hopefully, where is it? Yeah. So you see get persistence, version, unit name, entity type, ID. And then there were some composite keys. There's persist, merge, relationships, and this becomes interesting. So relationship is nothing else than a link. And this JPI RS is able to deal with links between entities. I think there's a similar project for OpenJPA called Jest, I think. Jest, OpenJPA. Yes. Similar to JPA-RS, it's just the idea that you can just expose directly JPA entities as resources with linking. So the question is, yeah, you have to do something about this, but there are frameworks like JPA-RS or OpenJPA do it for you. So I would just look what they are doing and just steal the ideas. So, okay, I hope question is answered or at least discussed. So we cannot go into the deep because we will spend, I think, 1 week with live event, but I hope you know where to start with linking. Okay, the next one is why the package name business, and because it seems redundant. And this is a good one because I always use business in my screencast, and it stops with this, and it would be extremely redundant. And the answer is usually there is also presentation. So in my project, there is one war with business, and I get another package called presentation. And in presentation, if I have JSF, the whole JSF, JSP, or struts code is in presentation. In the business is the business code. And sometimes I even have integration, which just cares about integration resources. So what it means integration resources, like if you have a crazy legacy system which is hard to access, then I would create an integration package with the whole access logic. Or for instance, if you have to implement a JCA connector API, then I would do this. So so again, what I'm a huge fan of is not probably monolithic deployment, but I would say atomic deployment. What it actually means is I have one war usually. So actually, I think the last year I developed is about, I don't know, in 2006 or something. So since then I'm just using wars since Java 6. Java 6 came out, I think, 2009, since 2009. So so imagine this is the war. And within the war, I have a presentation package and business package. And within the business package, we have the components we talked earlier, so with BCE. And within the presentation, I have whatever the application needs. There's actually no clear structure because it really depends whether it is a single page app or not, or workflow application, whatever. And usually I would start for simple application with JSF, JSPs, or whatever server-centric framework, Vaadin, RI, whatever. And this is why I always separate the code between business and presentation. So the business should not be dependent on presentation. If the business logic has to communicate with the presentation, I would usually use CDI events and nothing else. whatever else is forbidden. So there should be no coupling between business. So the business should not know that the presentation exists. And the easiest possible way is to introduce another package. Otherwise, you will have to implement 2 modules, which is huge overhead. And usually, if you deploy the application, you would like to deploy everything and not just a part of it. Yeah, this is the reason. Let's see. Question? No question. So Twitter is quiet today. So is Twitter down or what's the problem? So say at least hello. Where was the... there's also nothing here. So I think we clarified the business. What do you generally see as the potential problems when components call each other across different runtime environments like JE Spring? Is it a bad idea and should we just stick with pure Spring? Yes. So if you have Spring already in place, I would never mix Spring with Java EE because there are 2 injection models, 2 lifecycle models, and Spring has transactions. Java EE application server has transactions. So if you are happy with Spring, just use Spring. Forgot about CDI, EJB, whatever. But I would never use Spring on Java EE application server, and the reason is because there's too much overlap. I would use Spring on Tomcat, Jetty. I forgot the server. This was a nice Tomcat extension from Pivotal. T-server, I think, is the name. So use this, but never run Spring on Java EE. Why? Because you get add inject from CDI, add inject from Spring. And what it actually means is, you will have to explain to developers why there are so many annotations which are doing exactly the same or similar stuff. So I think lots of hello, hello. Perfect. So it works. So what are the best practices to avoid naming conflict with backing beans in JSF? So I use exactly the same what Rita Hotz actually suggested. I'm named the backing bean exactly the same as a JSF. Then you can of course get conflicts, but usually what I would do, I'd use the dot notation or just name it after the component. So if you have booking, I would call this car booking and flight booking. It is actually a good idea, and probably is also a good idea to rename the JSF pages as well, because if you have booking HTML 2 times, it's really hard if you are dealing with the deployment. I would just rename the JSF pages to booking, flight booking and car booking with underscore or just camel case. Camel case is a little bit problematic, and then rename the manage beans correspondingly. Okay. Oh, nice. So this is the first time ever sometime someone refers live to, as I see myself. So this is like mirror. Is actually only possible in a virtual environment. Nice. There was I wrote a post. I think it was I don't know 2 or 3 years ago. DTOs versus VOs, and Sun named the first time value objects, which was wrong because value objects means something different. And they renamed value object pattern to data transfer object pattern. And but this is the Pravin said something really interesting. So DTO could be more useful in distributed systems. Yes, it is actually only useful in distributed systems, because if you have to pass data between layers. If you look at the origin DTO definition, you will find that the data transfer objects were meant to first to transport data of the entity beans, container managed persistence entity beans, to the client, and there was actually no way to serialize the entity beans. So this was actually the job of DTOs, but we forgot about this. If you really like to see the intentions behind DTO, search for DTO J2EE patterns, and you should find exactly the transfer object, and this actually defines what is the actually idea behind DTOs. And you see you want clients to access components in other tiers to retrieve and update data. Other tiers, it already implies somehow network. So if you don't have a network between the client and the service, or the user and the service, you don't have to use DTOs. And there are, I think, one of the most overused patterns. Great question. So what do you think about JS frontend, Angular backbone, and Java EE backend to substitute the old enterprise apps, EJB, JSF, and JSPs? What I think. So I like Angular. I like actually JavaScript and HTML5. HTML5 a lot. HTML5 is semantic. I really like it. And by the way, we have a one-day discussion about this. It is Java EE UI and Java EE HTML5. So just a shameless plug, because it is less about the adverts about this, but more that someone who attended it could say yes. So we just argued the whole day what is actually better, JSF, JSPs, and HTML5, and really depends on the application. So very briefly, the problem with Angular and all single page apps, they are not that great for SEOs and server-side components, server-side frameworks are a lot better for SEOs, so search engine optimizations. Also, if you are looking at JSF are really easy and very productive to use in typical enterprise apps without high demand on UI. But if you would like to implement very good pixel perfect applications, I think you will have to go the HTML5 route. So I would say in enterprise, you could use JSF and be happy with it. But if you're using JSF, what I would use for sure is I will point my client to the components suite of prime faces, rich faces, or whatever, and say, we can build the applications for you, but we will only use components you see here, and there is no changes to the components. Because if you start to tweak the components, it is actually the beginning of the end. So this is the short answer. So for instance, in all my open source project, if you have to create something quickly, I would go with JSF. And if I have more demand on asynchronous loading, I would probably start with Angular right now. Is actually my honest answer. And there's also place for JavaFX. So this is the same story. JavaFX on the client, I'm more productive than for us with Angular. Why? Because JavaFX is Java, so I can use exactly the same infrastructure. Angular is JavaScript, so I need two builds, two quality assurance environments. And in my eyes, if you are able to use one programming language, you are always more productive than using multiple programming languages. But this would be actually a great question for the next Airhacks I/O. Tokens, security framework and tokens. I think there was one is OpenIDM. This was the prior framework from Sun. They provide SSO and single sign-on and stuff like this. I will look at this first. And there's also Apache, forgot the name, a nice one from Apache. Yeah, forgot the name. But thank you for the questions right now. So, also an interesting question, where do JSF beans go in the structure? So the JSF beans I would put to presentation package, but not I would not replicate the structure from the business package. Why not? Because what I saw so far is that there's no one-to-one relation, no strict one-to-one relation between views and backend components. Usually you get end-to-end. So if you are able to do the same structure in presentation business, great, but usually you are not able to do this. Okay, so just forget this. Okay, so I hope I answered the question. DTO, I think, killed. So, and this is a very interesting one. Is it possible to implement the HTTP session with JSession ID via Xheader and not cookie or URL? And this is a great one. And the problem is, if you have, it is possible, but not with Java EE or with servlets. Why not? Because even if you would use servlet filters or container requests, It is actually after the session is already established, because you can access the session already in the filter, and the filter is the earliest possible component which gets access to the session. So what you could use on the application server, you can replace HTTP response, which is proprietary, so this Tomcat is able to do this, and then you could do whatever you like. But I just looked at the Glassfish configuration. What you can do in Glassfish, you can rename the JSession ID to something else, and you can also force Glassfish on other application servers just to use cookie and never URL rewriting. So this is called HTTP only, and this is part of the spec. So what the spec suggests, that the application server would be able to rename the JSession ID to something else in a configurative way. And yeah, this is what you can do. But what you cannot do is just pass a token, whatever you like, and just change the token to a session. This is I'm not aware of this. I just look at the spec and play a little bit with servlet filters, and then occurred to me that actually this JSession ID happens at the very early stages where you have no control about the whole process. I think if there are no questions, we are done, which is surprising. So we are 10 minutes faster than the last time, which is actually great. So I would just look at the regular chat. Where is it? The Ustream chat. If you have any questions, ask the questions on Twitter, and of course submit the questions to Twitter. I will also gather the comments as always from my blogs and after the show and so forth. And wait a minute, I forget something. So I favorited some stuff. Christian Forlund asked me, sorry, so I have just go quickly over this. Is there any good way to debug concurrency logs? What I used in the past, and this was the only way we could find some problems. I used Mission Control. Yes, Mission Control. It was this from JRocket, and this was the only environment we were able to find deadlocks with even the new concurrency API. So I would look at this, and this and the feature is commercial right now. Is called, I think, flight control. A little bit confused with the Airhacks, but the name should be flight control. Okay. What do you think about JSPIC? Good enough. A little bit complex with the messaging, but I mean, if you need it, you need it. And before you are looking to the JSPIC, look briefly at Java EE security Adam Bean. What you can do out of the box with an article for Java Magazine, and where it was somewhere here. So what you can do with very primitive means with CDI produces and servlet. So just try this first and then see whether you need additional framework. Okay. Then responsive design in JSF, and yes, you're absolutely right, Nafis. This is actually the pass-through feature. Is very good. Responsive design. I mean, if you are really about responsive design, you probably don't like to use any components, and then is JSF as good as JSPs, I would say. So the point of the responsive design in JSF, actually, the component provider like Prime Faces will have to implement responsive design for you, and if you would like to do it by yourself in JSF, I think you are already on the wrong path. Yeah, this would be my. You cannot be too drastic. We discussed actually at the Airhacks, and then you attended the workshop. So you can of course use just very no components at all, just this standard which comes out of the box, and then just the binding, so that you would get something out of this. But yeah, but the best possible case for JSF is take Prime Faces, for instance. You can get all the components for free. Your clients, if it is perfectly happy with the components, you don't have to adjust anything. You are perfectly set. If the client is not happy with the components, you have a lot of stuff to do, which probably will kill the whole idea of JSF, and you will have to go with Angular, HTML5 or whatever. But we can discuss on the next time. I think we are almost over time. And let's see what else. So I have to kill off IE Internet Explorer. It's always a good idea to kill IE. That was just a joke. Actually, the recent IEs are very good. So if you have the recent one, it should work. I don't know what the context is. So yeah, but recent IEs are perfect, and the oldest are not that good. So thank you for watching. See you next month. So you can already subscribe to the show in Ustream. So this time there is a button, so you get reminded per. It's not necessary, but if you like, you can do this. And thank you for watching. Oh, how can I disable the passivation for a stateful EJB? It can be done in the admin console of the application server, and this is proprietary. So there is no spec doesn't dictate the activation of the passivation. But I'm actually not sure whether Java 7 introduced this passivation. I will have to look at this because we discussed this at least. So, but I always deactivate passivation for stateful session beans. Does not make any sense in my eyes. So, and this was always proprietary administrative task, which had nothing to do with Java E. And I will look at the spec. It will be a great question for the next show. So I will try to look at the spec and find out whether it is a part of the spec right now or not. So, then. Thank you for watching, and see you on one of upcoming conferences, workshops. So we have in July Airhacks Munich, so it's full as always, and but there are still seats left. So if you really would like to attend, come in July. And we have a special event about software quality and how to build robust software and metrics and Sonar and testing and all the stuff, because there's lots of requests about this, so about workshops, conference talks and so forth. So there is in July also a special event just about this. And yeah, thank you for watching. See you at Airhacks, projects, or even workshops. Thank you. Bye.